Earlier this year we reviewed the ZenBook 14 from Asus and we were quite pleased by its compactness and portability, and now we have its more affordable sibling at our disposal. This is Sandeep from RevAtlas and you're watching the review of the Asus Vivobook 14 X412. Right out of the box, the Vivobook feels lighter but slightly cheaper than the ZenBook, and while we won't call it a bad thing, the premiumness factor is definitely lacking here. The chassis overall feels quite nice with a plastic body and sandblasted aluminum lid, which gives the device an understated matte look. It makes the laptop look classier than its competition. The bezels on the device are bigger than on the ZenBook 14, especially the bottom chin, which makes the device slightly taller and wider than the ZenBook, and is also heavier at 1.5 kg compared to 1.2 kg of the ZenBook. These differences aside, the Vivobook 14 keeps the ergo lift hinge, which according to Asus gives the keyboard a 2-degree tilt for more ergonomic typing experience. Overall, we are fairly satisfied with the device as we didn't notice any screen wobbling or keyboard deck flex while typing. As much as we are pleased with the design and build quality of the Vivobook 14, the display is not good. The 14-inch 1080p TN panel has really bad viewing angles, and even a slight shift in the angle causes a huge shift in color and viewing brightness to a point that it ruins the entire experience. We were expecting a better panel from Asus, but upon closer inspection we found that an IPS panel option might be available, so if you do have that option, go for it, as we recommend that instead. Apart from the viewing angles, the color reproduction, brightness or contrast is nothing special and is just acceptable. The display does have a matte finish, which does help in reducing glare, but still isn't enough to compensate for low brightness to make it a viable option for use under direct sunlight. Under shade or indoors is perfectly fine though. The keyboard on the other hand has always been a strong suit for Asus slim and light devices, which is the case here as well. Even though the keys are smaller in size than other notebooks, typing on the keyboard feels better than one would expect with its 1.3mm travel, uniform stiff pressure points without any wobble, and we were blown away by the fact that it feels much better to type compared to even more expensive or thicker laptops. Asus has done a great job here and deserves a praise. The keyboard is also backlit in its all white color and is decently bright for typing those long emails in the dark, and it even provides 3 different brightness levels. Compared to the ZenBook 14, the touchpad on the Vivobook is much better with smoother surface, albeit a smaller one. We didn't notice any issues like the misses in registering motion or taps. The touchpad also uses Windows Precision drivers, so you can adjust the sensitivity and gestures according to your liking. It also houses the fingerprint scanner on the top right corner, which makes the touchpad feel smaller than it is. The buttons on the lower end of the touchpad also felt nice and clicks well. Overall, in terms of keyboard and touchpad, we couldn't find any major flaws and the experience was overall very good. The Vivobook doesn't skimp on ports either. Despite its small size and thinness, it's able to pack in a SD card reader, one USB 2.0 port, Kensington lock on its right side and power connector, HDMI connector, one USB 3.1 Gen Type A port, one USB 3.1 Gen 1 Type C port, combo audio on its right, which in our opinion should keep most users happy. In terms of wireless connectivity, you get a Realtek 8822B Wi-Fi 802.11 AC card. As you would expect with an Ultrabook, the room for upgradability is limited, but in the case of the Vivobook 14, you can upgrade the M.2 SSD and even the RAM, since there's one SODIMM slot available, which is preoccupied with a 4GB module in our case, while the other 4GB is soldered directly onto the motherboard for dual channel configuration. The fingerprint scanner is not really great as it misses registering fingerprints a lot of the time and you're forced to log in using a PIN or password. Another huge disappointing fact about the Vivobook are the speakers. While the speakers on most laptops aren't that good anyway, this one in particular is exceptionally bad. There's not much volume even as the highest setting, there's no bass, and the highs are lacking as well. The mids are well pronounced though. Audio output via the headphone jack isn't that great either, even though the DAC supports up to 24-bit 96kHz audio, decoding the soundstage and stereo separation was kind of lacking when we plugged in our studio monitor headphones. The app isn't impressive either as it'll struggle to drive higher impedance headphones at high volumes, but it's fine for normal users, although audiophiles should keep their distance from this device. Our unit integrates an Intel Core i5-8265U processor along with NVIDIA MX230 graphics, 8GB of DDR4 2400 memory, and a 512GB NVMe SSD storage supplied by Intel. In day-to-day use, the performance is fluid and stutter-free, but don't expect the device to get through your rendering and gaming workloads with ease. Even though the i5-8265U is a 4-core 8-thread processor, its TDP is locked at just 15 watts, post which the processor gets throttled down from its boost frequency of 3.9 GHz to somewhere around 2.2 to 2.4 GHz, which is still higher than its base speed of 1.6 GHz and stays there. During multi-threaded workloads, you might see spikes to 2.8 to 3 GHz if the CPU doesn't thermally throttle, which we found happening during our test, which might be due to lackluster cooling, where we found the CPU reaching 90+ degrees with ease. Applications that are mostly single-threaded can take proper advantage of the high frequency, as the laptop was able to score a solid 166 points on Cinebench R15 single-threaded test. For comparison, the i5-8250U scores 145 points, i7-8550U scores 165 points, and the last generation i7-7500U scores 140 points. While on the multi-threaded test it scores 687 points but then drops almost 100 points to 600 points, and on consecutive runs it stabilizes somewhere around 564 points, which all points to heavy thermal throttling. Our review unit is equipped with a 512GB NVMe SSD, and on initial testing we found the storage speeds to be pretty solid. GPU performance is pretty lackluster, as the MX230 was struggling to maintain a 60 FPS average on 1080p medium settings during deathmatch and would frequently show stutters and frame drops. More demanding titles like Shadow of the Tomb Raider benchmark ran at 16 FPS average at 720p with the lowest settings. The laptop is fairly quiet during normal workload, and we could only hear fans ramp up during 3D Mark test, still not to a level of being annoying. On the thermal side though, it gets really hot on the bottom left side when plugged in, but stays fairly cool on normal operations. The battery life is just average thanks to a measly 37 Wh battery, and we could hardly reach 5 hours of screen on time with an average brightness of 50% while web browsing. During video watching too, it couldn't last more than 6.5 hours. Apart from a few Asus apps and McAfee antivirus, the Windows installation on the Vivobook 14 was pretty clean, which is how most systems should come out of the box. All in all, the Vivobook 14 is a pretty good ultrabook in terms of portability and form factor. It has solid keyboard, and it also has decent connectivity. But it does have issues in terms of thermal throttling, lackluster audio, and average battery life. So if you're looking for an ultrabook for light usage, this should be fine, but if anything on the higher side, then you should look elsewhere. Also, if you're getting it, it's better to get the IPS model, considering the TN panel is not really that great. If you like this video, please do hit the subscribe button. Thanks for watching. See you again in the next one.